we will be recording, so if you stay on this call, you're consenting to be recorded if you have any questions. All right, so hi everyone, welcome. I'm Marie Grant, Maryland Insurance Commissioner. It is wonderful to be with you here all today. We have a few key updates from our end at the regulatory agency. And then I know that we have some questions from industry. We received a few questions in advance from APCIA. I'm going to do my best to try to answer those as we go through our agenda, but I also want to make sure that we have some time for discussion and I think any remaining questions that you may have. So again, welcome. So first of all, I just want to talk a little bit about the structure of our property and casualty unit, and some of the progress that's been made by this wonderful team. First of all, I want to introduce Erin Levine, who's our, I guess, are you still new, Erin?
I'm past the 6 month point, but I guess I'm always learning things. So maybe that makes me still new.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Aaron's our chief actuary for property and casualty. And he has hit the ground running in terms of hiring staff, exploring areas where we can support, and addressing our rate filings and the backlog that we have there. Aaron, I wanted to turn it to you to see if you have any introductory remarks or anything you want to share with this group.
I just want to mention that I think the Maryland Insurance Administration is a very proactive organization. We are looking to support our insurance consumers, but at the same time, we want to we are very excited that our insurers and our insurance companies are providing the insurance that the consumers need. So we are working for both the consumers and the companies, and we look to be supportive for both groups of growth, both groups.
Great. Thanks so much, Erin. And then I also wanted to introduce someone who may be familiar to folks, but who has recently been promoted to our Executive Director of Property and Casualty Complaints. And so we're so thrilled that Benita Cooper has stepped into this role. And similarly, this was an area that I know when I walked in the door, there was a significant backlog of complaints. And I know with her leadership, we've really made tremendous strides in getting that number down and proactively, I think, addressing consumer complaints. I know it's for consumers, it's good for the consumer when we can work through their complaints quickly and thoroughly. And we know it's also good for the industry as well, because I know I'm well aware that our companies are don't want these complaints languishing any longer than they need to either. So Benita, did you want to say anything and introduce yourself? No pressure.
No, I mean, I will say hello to everyone and would like to say that we are, I'm happy to be in this role, and our unit is with reorganization, is working proactively to reduce complaints, and to industry, if there's any questions or concerns about any files or things that are coming from our unit, please feel free to reach out to me, and we will be very responsive to move things forward. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Benita. Okay, so a couple of on topic, I think, industry questions or points that we did get in advance of this meeting is first of all, a delay in addressing complaints. And second of all, asking about the length of time it is taking to address rate filings, particularly in commercial. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And just say, first of all, we hear you. These are backlogs that are key areas for us to address as well. And I think we've made actually in the past 6 months tremendous strides in moving those forward. I think that there was a specific question about holds on complaints, holds an effect on policies while we investigate complaints and the impact there. I do want to say that the amount of complaints compared to the overall number that we receive in that situation is relatively low. That being said, I understand that it is a frustration if a complaint hold languishes longer than the term of a policy. So I just want to share with everyone, we've increased the staffing of our complaints unit significantly. We've added contractual help to make sure that we are addressing that backlog. And then we are also working to review our procedures to always make sure that we are addressing complaints in the most efficient way possible. There was a question about what can carriers do to help expedite the process. And I just want to say here, it would be very helpful for carriers to make sure when they're getting inquiries from our agency about consumer complaints to fully respond to all of the questions that are being asked and provide all of the information up front. Because I think what we tend to find is if we start to engage in a back and forth, that can really slow things down and delay the complaint. And of course, I think perhaps this goes without saying, but speed to answer our inquiries is also a key area where if companies respond to us quickly, we can address quickly as well. So I am seeing some pings that there's concern that attendees for this meeting have the chat disabled. I think we're trying to, oh, it's enabled. So great. So let me, on the complaints, let me see, Benita, did you have anything to add to those points?
No, you've hit the key points that we've reorganized, we've added staff, so we're just proactively now working to get those numbers down. And again, if there are any specific concerns that the carriers have, they can reach out to me directly, and we will try to, address those concerns and expedite anything that is needed.
Great. Great. I thought I saw a hand go up and down. Okay. In terms of rate filings, I think it is a similar story in that I think folks are aware that we had we lost a longtime actuary, right, who is critically involved in reviewing our commercial rate filings in PNC last summer. And so it has taken us some time to get up to full staff and speed, although I think we are there now. And so we are churning through that backlog on both commercial lines as well as personal lines. I will say that we get significantly more filings on commercial lines. And so I think that becomes part of the issue in addressing that backlog. We just get a lot of them, and it does take time. So a couple of things, and then I want to turn it over to Erin Levine to see if there's anything further to offer here. There are definitely areas where our insurers can help us in the speed of reviewing rate filings. Where our actuaries report that we're spending time through objection letters to obtain supporting data that insurers haven't always provided in that initial filing, and that right off the bat is going to slow down the review. I also want to be sure that folks, when they are filing, to make sure that they are reviewing Maryland law. There are some specific requirements for our laws and our forms, that again, just when folks submit generic filings and don't take the time to look at our law and address those issues, that can slow it down as well. We're also exploring the idea of having presentations for insurers, maybe on a quarterly basis. We've heard that's something that can work well in other states, to just share our expectations in terms of what defines a complete filing. I'm going to turn to Aaron to add any additional comments you have.
Yes, I would say that again, Linus was our primary actuary who was working on both commercial and personal filings, and with his passing, that put us back because the remaining actuary was focusing on uh, personal lines filings. So we have staffed up, and we now have a team of 5 actuaries that are addressing filings, as opposed to 2 that when I came. So we've split that up with 2 assigned to personal lines filings, 3 assigned to the commercial lines filings, and one of those 3 has a broad wealth of experience working for other insurance departments. So he's going through those pretty quickly. He's been on the job here about 2 weeks, and he's already covered 60 filings. So we look to have those filings move along much more rapidly. I would add that over time we have seen that even the commercial lines filings are beginning or have begun to include models, rate type of models based on GLMs or GBMs, and that does take us a little bit more time to analyze. So whereas that used to be a personal lines phenomenon, it now is both a personal and a commercial lines phenomenon, and it is taking us a little bit more time to cover that. As I mentioned, on average, we're getting about 1,100 filings over the last 12 months. That comes down to 92 per month we need to review and to try to resolve. So with the staffing we had before, that just made it it wasn't quite possible to produce that number of filing reviews. But now I think we are staffed up, and it should be adequately to not only maintain the pace of the incoming filings, but to catch up on the past filings as well.
Got it. Thanks so much, Aaron. Nancy, I think Nancy Egan has her hand raised. Craig, can you take Nancy off mute?
There we go. Hi, thank you so much. Um, I I know that you're saying that the chat is supposed to be disabled. We're unable to put things in the chat. At least I haven't been able to.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
thank you so much. We appreciate you working through our technical difficulties. So folks, I think if you have a question, you will, at least until we get this chat issue resolved, you will need to raise your hand. And then like we just did for Nancy, we'll move you to the panelist side of the webinar.
Thanks so much. And if we could get the email addresses for Aaron and Benita, that would be great. I'll make sure my members have that if they have any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nancy. Okay, great. Any other questions from folks? Are there any other hands raised? I think I just see yours, Nancy, so far. Okay. So next on our agenda is just a quick update on 2025 legislative studies and reports related to PNC. we have two interrelated reports that we're going to be working on this year. So one is a request for MIA and Maryland Auto to work together on rate assignments by zip code. So we are going to be working with the Maryland Auto team on that, but there are some questions in that also I think interlink with the broader conversation that we will be having as a part of House Bill 1098 of the 2025 session. So we will be convening a work group. I think we're just waiting on one Senate appointment, Jamie, is that correct? Or is it the House we're waiting on?
I believe it's the House.
Okay, we're waiting on one House.
I take it back. I'm mistaken. You're correct, Commissioner. Yeah, it is the Senate. I apologize. My memory is fading apparently at this point after session.
Thanks, Jamie. So we're waiting on one Senate appointment. We anticipate getting started with that work in July, and we'll be sure to keep you all in the loop on that. So with that, I am going to, Nancy, your hand is still up. Did you have a follow-up question?
Just one question. Will
Sure.
those be in person or will be just virtual, the meetings?
I would
Work group.
say TBD. I think I think they will likely be mostly virtual. But I think again, TBD. Virtual does allow us to get the most participation. I think certainly makes it easier to schedule for folks.
Thank you. I know sometimes our member like to come to Annapolis and see everyone, and so I know that they once in a while, how that is during the interim. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Stay tuned. It's a great question. Any other questions before I turn it over to Jamie Sexton to give our legislative update? Okay, Jamie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. I think most of you have probably already seen our end of session bulletin. Craig's going to pop the link in the chat in case you haven't for your perusal. Because that incorporates the bills that we'll be talking about today, except for one, we will be keeping this pretty high level. These are bills that I think the majority of you on this call were pretty involved with this session, so you're probably very familiar, but we always like to give a quick high-level overview to make sure that they are on your radar as having passed this session. So we're going to start with House Bill 15, Senate Bill 144. This is the Limited Worker Cooperative Associations Authorization Bill, also known as the Maryland Limited Worker Co-op Association Act. This adds subtitle 12A to the Corporations and Associations article, and it establishes the Maryland Limited Worker Co-op Association Act that provides for the formation, operation, and dissolution of a limited worker co-op association. Of particular note here is section 4A 12A 11 of the Corporations and Associations article, which requires an insurer that provides workers' comp insurance to members of a limited worker co-op association who are covered employees to calculate premiums for such employees in accordance with Title 11, Subtitle 3, and Title 19, Subtitle 4 of the insurance article, and based on the employee's actual payroll value. Now, that section of the article defines actual payroll value as the total amount of money paid to an employee after taxes and deductions, and includes base salary, bonuses, overtime, leave benefits, commissions, and tips. It should also be noted that this also amends the insurance article. That's section 2108. To provide the insurance commissioner can enforce 4A 12A 11 of the Corporations and Associations article that we just discussed. Next up on our list is House Bill 438, Senate Bill 581. This is a tortious injury to or death of pet compensatory damages, or buddies law. This increases the maximum amount of compensatory damages that may be awarded to the owner of a pet from a person who tortiously causes injury to or the death of that pet under specified circumstances from $10,000 to $25,000. You'll note that this is not necessarily in the insurance article, but it does have potential to have insurance implications, as you can imagine. Next up is House Bill 1098. Now, this is the Maryland Auto and Affordability Study that Commissioner Grant just mentioned. In addition to the uncodified language that directs the work group that the Commissioner discussed, it also adds 2306 to the insurance article to require that Maryland Auto calculate and report on its risk-based capital level. It also requires Maryland Auto to increase its surplus such that it reaches and maintains total adjusted capital in an amount greater than or equal to its company level RBC. And that has to be done by December 31st, 2026, according to legislative language. It also amends 2507 of the insurance article to require that Maryland Auto comply with prior approval between July 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2026, and any subsequent point in which their total adjusted capital falls below the amount required, as discussed previously. Next up is House Bill 1148. This deals with lapses in coverage with residential condominium unit insurance. This prohibits an insurer from refusing to issue a new policy covering a residential condo unit based solely on the fact the applicant has experienced a lapse in coverage of the unit if the lapse in coverage was due to an insurer's withdrawal from the market and was not longer than 90 days. It authorizes the insurer to require that an applicant who has experienced a lapse in coverage and meets the criteria just referenced provide an affidavit that the applicant has not incurred any losses during the lapse of coverage and other documentation that demonstrates satisfaction of the criteria. And then last up is House Bill 1251. This deals with doula and birth policy transparency. This adds 19104.1 to the insurance article, which requires that a medical professional liability insurer, if requested, provide the Department of Health with information regarding their policy related to coverage of OB services, including coverage for a vaginal birth after a cesarean. I know that was very quick, and that was a lot of information. Like I said, we have additional information about each of these bills in our end of session bulletin. I would encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't already. If you have any questions about any of these, feel free to post them now, or feel free to shoot me an email as well if they're particularly granular or you want any additional information, or if you have questions about bills that we didn't cover today, but you may have seen in the end of session bulletin and you'd like additional info, feel free to reach out with that as well. And I will also put my email address in the chat if that's helpful.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. Any questions for Jamie about any of that work? Okay. All right. So next on our agenda, we have Raymond Guzman, who's our Chief of Market Analysis, and he's going to give a brief update of some of the work we're working on with the telematics survey, as well as the homeowners market data call that we conducted through NAIC. Ray, there you go.
And everyone, my name is Raymond Guzman, and I'm the Chief of Market Analysis here at the Maryland Insurance Administration. We're under the Market Regulation and Professional Licensing Unit, and my unit is primarily tasked with just overseeing the general market activity and changes that we're experiencing here in the state of Maryland. That's everything from changes in product offerings to changes in technologies implemented within the market, to changes in the types of complaints that we're receiving. And so we're really a catch-all for a lot of things for the agency. One of the high priority items for the Maryland Insurance Administration this year is the adoption rate of telematics in the auto insurance market in our state. All of the data that we have available to us is indicating that the enrollment rate in these telematics programs offered by the various carriers in our state has been increasing steadily over the last few years and is at an all-time high. That being said, alongside that, we have received numerous complaints from Maryland consumers that have experienced a change in their premium as a result of their insurance carrier reviewing the data that was collected through their telematics program. So that being said, we're concerned about everything in the life cycle of when a consumer signs up for one of these programs to when they have their premium adjusted. In particular, we're very interested in the disclosures that are being provided to Maryland consumers before they enroll in these programs. Interested very heavily in the notifications that they're receiving and that they're receiving them timely before their premium is set to adjust. And then also very interested in making sure that the privacy and the safeguarding of the data that insurance carriers are receiving, that the Maryland consumers' data is protected, especially given the sensitivity of what they have. In the pursuit of our efforts to review the state of telematics in our state, there is a report that we'll be making available that will detail kind of a general what's been going on with telematics in the private auto insurance market over the last 3 years, and that should be coming out shortly. And as we continue to review what's going on with telematics in our state, we'll be sure to put out additional information and to reach out to carriers as needed for additional information to make timely decisions. In addition, the Property and Casualty Insurance Market Intelligence Data Call was issued last year by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Maryland was a participating jurisdiction. The purpose of this data call was for the first time to obtain zip code level data on the homeowners insurance market to aid us as regulators in reviewing both the availability and affordability of coverage across the state of Maryland. This is a level of detail that we've never had before, and already over the course of a year, it's proven invaluable as we respond to changes in our market and to events. For instance, in the aftermath of the flooding in Western Maryland, we were able to utilize the data that we had available to quickly determine which insurance carriers were going to be the largest impacted by that event. And it enabled our consumer education and advocacy unit to reach out to those carriers and to make sure that we were ready to be a resource for Maryland consumers as they reached out to their insurance carriers about the losses that they experienced, to make sure that they were timely assisted and that they had the knowledge they needed to move forward with communicating with their company about what had occurred to them if they were impacted by this event. Aside from the internal use that we've used of this data over the course of the last year and that we will continue to use in our day-to-day activities as our units require information and we have that available now to provide to them, we will be putting out a report as well shortly that will detail some of the high-level insights for specific regions of the state of Maryland. And we look forward to putting that out shortly as well. And we look forward to continuing to participate with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners as we look with other jurisdictions to continue this data call and to collect data for subsequent years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Any questions? All right, so moving right along, I'm gonna turn this over to Solon Webb, who's our senior market conduct examiner, and he's gonna give an overview of our expectations for cybersecurity filings.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm your carrier's point of contact for notification of cybersecurity events, hacking events, security breaches, exfiltration events, and things of that nature in accordance with Title 33 of the insurance article. For those who may not be familiar with the way to report an event, you can access the MIA website, clicking on the Insurers tab, then clicking on Cybersecurity. This takes you to an online form called the Initial Cybersecurity Event Notification Form. This form is based on the requirements of Title 33 of the insurance article. The carrier may not have all of the information requested in the form initially. However, the form should be completed to the best of the carrier's ability and submitted within 3 business days from the very first date Maryland residents were identified or the carrier believes the Maryland residents may be impacted. We will confirm receipt of your event notification and request any additional information by email to the carrier's designated point of contact. It's our obligation to ensure a few things in accordance with sections 33-104 and 105 of the insurance article. In particular, we want to determine the total number of impacted Maryland residents. We want to ensure the commissioner is notified within 3 business days from the very first date Maryland residents are identified. Submitting this initial event notification form within 3 business days satisfies that requirement. Ensuring we receive a sample copy of the notice of data breach that's to be sent to the impacted Maryland residents, and getting a schedule of the mailing dates for the notices of data breach that go out to the Maryland residents, and a date of the copy of the notice sent to the Maryland Attorney General's office. He has to get that copy of the notice for his review. and ensuring we get a copy of your carrier's information security program and a copy of their written action plan. And you can get more detail on that if you look at Bulletin 22-13 or go to the insurance article 33. I'd like to emphasize that the meaning of carrier includes third-party service providers such as vendors, managing general agents, and third-party administrators. Over the past 18 months, the vast majority of the initial event notifications that I have received note that the cybersecurity event occurred with a third-party service provider. If a carrier learns that a cybersecurity event has or may have occurred in a system maintained by a third-party service provider, the carrier shall confirm and document that the carrier or an outside vendor or service provider designated to act on behalf of the carrier shall at a minimum determine whether a cybersecurity event has occurred, the nature and scope of the cybersecurity event, and identification of non-public information that may have been involved in the cybersecurity event, and perform or oversee reasonable measures to restore the security of the information systems compromised in the cybersecurity event to prevent further unauthorized acquisition, release, or use of non-public information in the carrier's possession, custody, or control. The insurance industry has always been a top target for cyber attacks, particularly ransomware attacks. In 2024, the average ransomware payment was over 2.5 million. I expect attacks may increase with the popularity of RAAS, ransomware as a service. Even the most inexperienced hacker can launch a cyber attack now. Whether they are successful or not depends on the due diligence of the carriers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions about cybersecurity and reporting? Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about preparations for hurricane season. First of all, let me say while knocking on wood, my hope is that we have a calm, uneventful summer with no major weather events. Unfortunately, I think our summer has started off not shaping up that way with the flooding in Western Maryland, and we can talk a little bit about that. I know there was a question from APCIA about that. But first, I just wanted to give an overview for the industry about expectations and how we will respond if we do have some sort of major weather event that impacts whether it be a small portion of the state or a large portion of the state. So first of all, depending on the nature of the event, our Deputy Commissioner Joy Hatchett may reach out to you in advance to see what preparations you've made to handle claims that may arise. For example, have you moved your CATS teams to Maryland? Have you started any messaging with a dedicated line for claims? And she'll do that just as general preparation so that we can hit the ground running to help consumers, again, if we are faced with a major weather event. Just after a weather event, we may reach out informally or formally for claims numbers. The frequency and detail of that outreach is probably going to depend on the event. And let me just pause here and just say thank you. I know that we did some outreach after the Western Maryland events, and we got really prompt responses from our carriers. And so really, really appreciate that. It was very helpful for our work. We may issue bulletins under our emergency powers. And I will say this happened in the Western Maryland situation. Relatively small portion of our state was very severely impacted by weather events. And so the governor did declare a state of emergency. And when that happens, we have the ability to take several actions. We did in Western Maryland. We may do that depending again on the weather event. But that's only the first trigger of that is when the governor declares a state of emergency. We may ask you to participate in virtual or in-person resource centers, again, depending on the nature of the event. And I think we found this really to be extraordinarily helpful for consumers as well, to have folks on the ground to help with their questions. And then finally, all companies will be expected to participate in rapidly responding to any claims issues that arise out of a weather event, even if the claims issues are not part of the rapid response program. So just want to set that expectation for folks. The last thing that I want to mention is that we ask you that you please make sure your disaster contact information, that is who we should be reaching out to if any of these events should occur. You should make sure that contact information is up to date. And if you're not sure who your contact person is, or you need to update it, please reach out to Joyce Peach. That's Joyce, JOYCE.peach@maryland.gov. And Joyce, if you could drop your email in the chat for folks, that would be fantastic as well. Any questions?
Please use the raise hand feature on the Zoom if you have a question.
Yeah. For folks, just a reminder, I think our chat function is unfortunately not working for our attendees. And so if you do have a question, please raise your hand and we'll move you over to the panelist side so you can ask a question. Okay. I will say that we did get a question from APCIA that was pretty specific about our emergency bulletin and filings for or that carriers may not have a rate in certain circumstances. And I will say to that question, I think that whichever company raised that, or companies, we would encourage you to contact us separately. I think we'd like to discuss in a little more detail what that question is specifically, to see if we can help out, and also see if there is a broader issue that we need to think about proactively for future emergency situations. Does that work for you, Nancy?
I guess the question would be for the emergency regulations. And I was just giving you an example where a carrier is non-renewing a policy. They send out the necessary 45-day notice of cancellation, but then, the emergency regulation is issued that they had to put a hold on all cancellations. So the notice has gone out, but now they can no longer cancel based on circumstances of the risk. This is different than non-payment. This would be, an underwriting cancellation. So now they've put a hold on that cancellation. So the company now is sort of in this in-between pattern where they send out notice of cancellation, but now they need to withdraw it. Or is there something that they should be doing differently? Or are they allowed, after the cancellation period is lifted, is that still effective? I don't know if I'm explaining that clearly, but this is that situation where this is an underwriting cancellation versus a payment cancellation.
Yeah, I mean, did folks have many of these situations with a pretty limited emergency situation, or is this more of a hypothetical for the future?
This is really more for a hypothetical in the future. I understand that area was a fairly limited area scope for this emergency regulation, but we're thinking in the future when we have these holds on cancellations overall, And we understand the non-payment that happens all the time, but it's the underwriting cancellation. We provided you an example where now they have a hold on the cancellation. I assume they need to release the risk. They need to renew the policy because the hold keeps them from canceling due to underwriting, and therefore they have to renew the risk based on the prior term, where some of the exposures now are not calculated because they thought they were getting off the risk.
So I think what would be helpful for us is if folks could, Nancy, if you could gather any sort of further follow up or examples of how this might be create harmful situations for your members. And I think if other folks on the call have examples that they can send to us, and Craig will follow up, I think with an email. Folks can either send those questions to Craig, or we can get out again at an email. I think how we'd like to handle those types of questions is review them, see what situations we have in advance, see if there are specific areas of harm where that the companies might be faced with, so that we can think about whether we need to do some sort of bulletin and FAQ for the future. I hope there's no future, but we need to be prepared. So
I
that would
agree.
be
I have to tell you.
helpful.
But
Yeah.
I'm going to be sending out a synopsis of this. So I'll ask them to provide more examples. That would be great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it too. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, any other questions from folks on the call? Okay, so that was our list of that's our agenda. We did get a couple of other questions from APCIA in advance. Nancy, I don't know if you want to run through those or if you want me to run through them.
Sure, I'll run through them. That would be great.
Okay,
I really appreciate it. Let me get to the easy one. I just wanted to let you know I shared a copy of the storm chaser legislation in advance that we would like to pursue in 2026. That's just a copy. Love to sit down and talk with Jamie and team afterwards to discuss it. I know there was some similar legislation this year out in the House Economics, which was similar but not quite the same. But I know you are aware that many of our carriers are especially concerned about roofer fraud, and we feel that maybe this legislation might be able to address some of those concerns. So that's the easy one on the list. The other thing that I had listed is about workman's compensation. So the underwriting bulletin of last year had to talk about certain case history here in Maryland, where if you have a rate filed, then you can't get off the risk because you have that rate filed. For workman's comp, most carriers adopt the NCCI guidance and rate guidance. And so currently for Maryland, there's close to 550 class codes for different type of workers classification. And what happens then, based on the underwriting guidance, is that a carrier would have to go through all 550 of those classifications and go back and say, we don't want to write those risks, and then send that in and remove them from their rating factors, which is really time consuming. This is especially true because now, if they did remove them, if at audit, which comes after the policy is already renewed, they don't now have a classification listed, for example, which I had sent in. Let's say they don't want to write roofers, so they have now gone through the 550 class codes and removed roofers, and now at audit they find out that this contractor is now actually doing roofs, and now they can't charge a rate because they don't have a rate class to charge the rate. So some guidance perhaps on how they should handle that. And then APCI members, as you know, we write a large portion of the workman's comp here in Maryland, would like to see a way to address this through legislative action so that workman's comp could be removed from that guidelines that are provided by the underwriting bulletin. And I know that's not something you can answer today, but we would definitely like you to consider that, or perhaps provide some guidance for this sort of catch-22 situation where if you don't have the risk and then it comes up an audit, then you can't charge for the correct premium exposure. So
Yeah, no, thank you, Nancy. That's helpful. I think we will probably circle back on that question, sort of similarly uh, to the cancellations issues. I think we'd like to hear a little bit more about the issue and see what it is that, to your point, if there's things under current law that can help, or whether it needs a legislative clarification.
that would be wonderful. We would really appreciate it. This has been this issue. We've seen it. I know that, ISO sends out similar things, et cetera, but it's really impactful on, especially in workman's comp, because there's so many class codes, which they normally just adopt. And Maryland is the only state where we have that underwriting bulletin that has been determined by, a case history. So we understand the situation where MIA has to follow the case history. So we appreciate any guidance and any further discussion. So we appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nancy.
And I have nothing further, by the way. By the way, I should say thank you for having this meeting. This is great. And I didn't realize that we were going to be the only ones submitting all the comments. So I apologize. Thank you.
No, not at all. Appreciate it, Nancy. Thank you. We do have a lot of folks on the call who are very quiet, and that's not been my experience with this group usually. So I do wanna. We have 9 minutes. Okay, someone has raised their hand. Fantastic. Craig, can you move them over? Great.
There was a mention of proposed storm chaser legislation, I'm guessing affecting contractors or something. Is that something that's going to be submitted for the public to review as well, or for those of us in the industry?
Yeah, Mike. So I think Nancy is from APCIA and indicated that they may be pursuing legislation. I think there is an NQuail model. So if you're in the industry, I would encourage you to take a look at that. But in terms of MIA, I think we're I think we always review concepts that folks have. We're not taking a position on the legislation at this point in time. It is way too early, but I think if you're interested and want to take a look, I would look for the NQuail model on contracting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Okay, John?
Hi, yes, John Savant with the Insurance Agents and Brokers Association. Just wanted to throw my hat in as well in support of the Storm Chasers legislation and the model that the APCIA has been working on.
Got it. Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments from folks on the phone? Okay. Well, if that's it, again, we'll send out contact information for follow-up. Craig did put his email in the chat. And we just really want to thank you, everyone who participated in today's call. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your engagement. I think our goal is to be as transparent as we can be with all of our members of the industry, as well as our consumers and the public. So as always, if there are items that we touched on today that you would like more information about or want to discuss further, please don't hesitate to reach out. Craig, I saw you come on camera. Any last closing words?
No, I think that's good. And I will turn off our recording. So.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining.